I want you to picture something for a second. Just picture a 23-year-old guy.
Yeah.
He weighs nearly 300 pounds, and he works the graveyard shift as a pest control exterminator in Indianapolis.
Wow, that is a tough gig.
It really is. I mean, he's spending his nights crawling through these dark, cramped attics, just spraying poison on roaches and rats, and his diet is mostly fast food, like entire pizzas.
Right.
But underneath all of that, he is carrying this crushing, suffocating weight of intense self-loathing. He basically feels like an absolute nobody.
Yeah, I mean, that is the absolute definition of rock bottom, a life defined entirely by stagnation, fear, and, just hiding from the world.
Exactly. Now, I want you to hold that image in your mind, because that exact same man is David Goggins.
It's just wild to even think about.
Right. The guy who, just a few years later, would graduate Navy SEAL training. And not just graduate, but after enduring not one, not two, but 3 brutal hell weeks.
3 of them, which is almost unheard of.
Yeah. This is the same man who would break the world record by doing 4,030 pull-ups in 17 hours.
Unbelievable.
And the man who would run a 135-mile ultramarathon through the scorching heat of Death Valley, literally passing competitors while his own kidneys were actively failing.
The contrast between that exterminator and the elite athlete is so extreme it almost sounds fictional. It really forces you to wonder what kind of psychological alchemy took place to bridge that massive gap.
Welcome to this deep dive, because our mission today is not just to marvel at an extreme endurance athlete like he's some kind of, superhero.
All right, that's not the point.
Exactly. We are here to extract his exact psychological operating system, the specific actionable tools he used to completely tear down and rebuild his own mind, as laid out in his book, Can't Hurt Me.
And we should probably warn everyone, this material gets quite dark.
It does. We're going to be talking about severe childhood trauma, physical abuse, and levels of physical suffering that most of us just can't even fathom.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
But the payoff for you listening right now is incredibly powerful. We are looking at a blueprint for bypassing your own mental limitations. Okay, let's unpack this.
We really have to start at the foundation. Because
Because he ran a roller skating rink called State Land in a rougher part of town, right?
Yes. And he exploited David, his brother, and their mother for free labor.
We're talking 12 to 14 hours a day, every single day.
And the physical violence was routine and brutal. Toughness would beat their mother, often right in front of the boys, and subject the kids to extreme beatings with a leather belt.
The sensory details from the sources here are just haunting. I mean, young David would stand on a little stepladder just to reach the skates, constantly spraying them with this cheap disinfectant.
Right, the disinfectant.
Yeah, he breathed in so much of that spray that his eyes were perpetually bloodshot red.
You really have to consider the psychological toll that takes on a developing brain, especially compounded by sheer exhaustion.
Oh, absolutely. He would go to school the next morning functioning on 0 sleep, falling asleep at his desk, unable to retain any information.
And then getting labeled as a slow learner by his teachers because they had no idea what was happening at home.
It's tragic. But the turning point finally came when David was 8.
Right. His mother, Jackie, executed a highly strategic escape. She fled with the boys to Indiana, taking absolutely nothing with her just to get away.
Which is such a brave move.
It is. And from a psychological perspective, this early environment is crucial. We so often discuss the debilitating effects of PTSD, but what we see later in Goggins is a profound example of post-traumatic growth.
I'm glad you brought that up because I see people romanticize trauma all the time.
Oh, constantly.
Right, acting like it's this magical, necessary ingredient for greatness. But Goggins explicitly rejects the idea that his trauma was some kind of quote-unquote gift.
Completely. He views it strictly as raw material. Many people experience similar trauma and are understandably broken by it. But his mother's strategic escape provided him with his very first model of agency.
Like showing him that you can actually change your situation.
Exactly. It showed him that you can take action to alter your environment, which served as a vital defense against permanently adopting a victim mentality later on.
I like to think of it with this analogy. Trauma isn't a pre-forged sword that automatically makes you a warrior. It's just raw, jagged iron ore.
That's a great way to put it.
If you just hold on to it, it's just going to cut your hands. It's nothing but pain. But if you have the will, you can melt it down in a furnace and hammer it into a tool.
Yes, exactly.
But let me push back on this timeline a little bit, because by his early 20s, That trauma had caught up with him anyway.
It did. The escape wasn't a magic fix.
Right. He's 300 pounds, deeply depressed, at absolute rock bottom. So when he finally decides to change after seeing a documentary about Navy SEALs, is he actually running toward a grand goal of being a SEAL, or is he just desperately running away from his own self-loathing?
It is entirely the latter at the beginning. The initial motivation wasn't born of confidence or aspiration. Not at all. It was born of pure desperation.
Just needing out.
Yeah, he hated his current self so intensely that any alternative, even one that might literally kill him, was preferable. That desperate energy provided the initial spark.
But raw desperation doesn't magically burn off 100 pounds in 90 days.
No, it definitely does not.
You need a mechanism to face the reality of your starting point, especially when you need to qualify for SEAL training just to get to the starting line.
And that requires stripping away all the comforting lies we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Which is why he developed a concept he calls the accountability mirror.
The accountability mirror.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is a far cry from the mirror exercises you read about in standard self-help literature.
Oh, yeah. There are absolutely no positive affirmations here.
No.
You aren't looking in the mirror saying, you are smart, you are beautiful, you are enough. It operates more like a reverse social media feed.
A reverse social media feed. I like that.
Yeah, instead of a highly curated highlight reel of your best angles, it is a brutal, unvarnished, low-light reel. He buys a pack of Post-it notes and writes down his specific failures, his excuses, his lies.
Things like, I quit my workout early, or I ate garbage today, or even just, I'm afraid.
Right. He sticks them to his bathroom mirror, and every single morning he forces himself to look himself in the eye and read them out loud.
And then, crucially, he writes a specific, actionable step to fix each one for that day. What's fascinating here is the psychological mechanism at play.
Which is what?
Well, most of us go to immense lengths to avoid uncomfortable self-knowledge. We rationalize our poor choices, we distract ourselves with screens, we blame external circumstances.
Right, it's always someone else's fault.
Exactly. But the accountability mirror removes all escape routes. By doing this daily, he is building what psychologists call self-confrontation tolerance.
Self-confrontation tolerance.
Yeah. It's the ability to look at your own deepest flaws without flinching and without deflecting blame.
But I can hear listeners wondering how focusing purely on your failures every single morning isn't just incredibly depressing. Like, if my mirror is covered in my worst traits, how does that not completely crush my self-esteem?
It would be crushing if the exercise ended there, leaving you to just wallow in the reflection. But the mirror demands an answer to the question, what are you going to do about it today?
Ah, the action step.
Right. Self-esteem isn't actually built by lying to yourself. It's built by recognizing a deficit and then actively closing that gap through undeniable daily action.
And for you, listening to this, your mirror doesn't have to be about making it through Navy SEAL Hell Week.
Oh, definitely not.
It might be a Post-it note that says, I lost my temper with my kids today because I was stressed about work. Or, I scrolled on my phone for 3 hours instead of finishing that project.
It's about practicing that micro level of brutal honesty. That honesty is the absolute prerequisite for change. But confronting the gap between who you are and who you want to be requires massive amounts of energy.
Which brings us to a major roadblock. When you are 100 pounds overweight and you start running, your brain is going to scream at you to stop 10 minutes in.
Oh, it will scream loudly.
Right, so how do you override that biological stop sign? That is where his most famous concept comes in, the 40% rule.
The 40% rule.
It states that when your mind is telling you that you are completely exhausted, that your lungs are burning, that you cannot possibly take another step or do another rep, you are actually only at 40% of your true physiological capacity.
And he claims this isn't merely a motivational metaphor to fire you up. It is a biological reality.
Really? A biological reality?
Yes. Your mind has a built-in governor, much like the speed governor on a commercial truck engine. That governor evolved over millennia to conserve energy and keep you safe from starvation and physical destruction.
Makes sense for cavemen.
Right. But in our modern, incredibly comfortable world, that governor activates prematurely.
There's a brilliant story from the sources that illustrates this so well. Years after his SEAL training, he was invited to speak on a panel at MIT.
Yes, the MIT panel.
Yeah, and an esteemed professor was up there arguing that human beings have strict genetic ceilings. He was presenting data showing hard physiological limits that we just can't pass.
Hard limit.
And Goggins interrupted him in a room full of academics.
Which is such a Goggins move.
It really is. He argued that, sure, those genetic ceilings might apply to the vast majority of people who stay safely in their comfort zones, but not to the 1% who are willing to truly suffer.
Right.
He told this professor that with a fully armored mind, you can absolutely defy those genetic odds.
And the science actually backs Goggins up on this. If we look at the psychobiological model of endurance, it proves that the feeling of fatigue is not what we think it is.
How so?
The brain's anterior cingulate cortex, which is the region involved in anticipating pain and detecting errors, acts like a hyperconservative fuel gauge.
A hyperconservative fuel gauge.
Exactly. It sends massive stop signals, flooding your system with the sensation of exhaustion long before the muscles or cardiovascular system are actually depleted.
Think about a time you went for a run. Maybe it's a 5K, and at mile 2, you feel completely gassed. Your legs are lead, your breathing is ragged, you are convinced you have nothing left.
We've all been there.
But then you turn the corner and see the finish line, and suddenly you find the energy to sprint the last 200 yards. Where did that energy come from? Your muscles didn't magically regenerate in 5 seconds.
No, they didn't. Your brain simply released the governor because it visually confirmed that the threat of overexertion was about to end.
Wow.
The feeling of exhaustion is an emotion generated by the brain to protect you, not an objective measurement of your remaining muscle fibers.
See, I buy the 40% rule in theory.
Right.
But let's be real here. When you are deeply in the suck, when your lungs are burning and you are in agonizing pain, logic completely vanishes. You aren't thinking about the anterior cingulate cortex.
No, you are definitely not thinking about neuroscience.
Exactly. There has to be a mental override switch to access that remaining 60% when your body is basically shutting down.
And you need a way to remind your panicked brain of its own track record. He calls this mechanism the cookie jar.
The cookie jar. Okay, so the cookie jar is a mental repository of your past victories. It is a highly specific collection of moments where you previously overcame the impossible.
Right, because that tunnel vision we experience during severe suffering is dangerous. It shrinks your entire universe down to the present moment and the current pain.
You completely forget that you have survived terrible things before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to consciously, mentally reach into the cookie jar and pull out a memory to combat that amnesia.
For him, a cookie was graduating SEAL training after being rolled back twice for severe injuries, or vividly remembering his mother managing to escape his father with nothing but the clothes on her back.
He replays those moments in high definition.
Right, to remind himself what he is actually capable of enduring.
From a neurological standpoint, he is engaging in mental time travel and emotional anchoring. The human brain has a remarkably hard time distinguishing between a vividly recalled emotional memory and a present reality.
That's amazing.
Yeah, by intensely focusing on the emotional state of a past triumph, he overrides the current despair flooding his system.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Remembering past victories is helpful, but he takes it a step further. He views the mind exactly like a muscle that needs to be broken down to grow stronger.
Breaking down to build up.
Right. Think about learning to play the guitar. At first, pressing down on those steel strings is agonizing. It cuts right into your soft fingertips.
Anyone who's tried knows that pain.
But if you keep playing, the skin responds to the friction by building a callus. Eventually, the skin hardens, and the exact same pressure doesn't hurt at all. You bypass the pain entirely.
He applies that exact physical principle to mental and emotional distress, creating what he calls a calloused mind. And he built his own systematic exposure therapy to achieve this through the discomfort menu.
The discomfort menu. So he challenges the reader to build a menu of voluntary hardships. Well, level 1 might be taking a 30-second cold shower or waking up 30 minutes early. Level 2 could scale up to a 5-minute cold shower or a 24-hour fast.
And level 3.
Level 3 pushes into 10-minute cold showers or 48-hour fasts. And the goal here is not to suddenly learn to love freezing water.
Obviously not.
The goal is to do it repeatedly until it becomes emotionally neutral.
In clinical psychology, this is known as interoceptive exposure. You are deliberately experiencing uncomfortable bodily sensations on a regular basis to systematically diminish the amygdala's threat response.
And this translates directly to everyday life. because the panic your nervous system feels when the cold water hits your back uses the exact same chemical pathway as the panic you feel when you get a terrifying email from your boss.
Or when you have to have a difficult conversation with a partner.
Exactly. By training your body to stay calm under the physical stress of the cold shower, you are biologically training it to stay calm under the emotional stress of the email.
You are expanding your baseline of distress tolerance. You are proving to your nervous system that discomfort does not equal death.
But how do you, as the listener, tell the difference between good pain that builds a mental callus and bad pain that is just unnecessary self-harm?
That's the real question.
Because when we look at Goggins' story, we see him running ultramarathons until he's peeing blood and his kidneys are failing. That seems like undeniably bad pain.
That is the tightrope he walks, and he openly admits he has crossed it, sometimes at great cost.
Right.
Good pain is growth-oriented. It stretches your current capacity and builds resilience. Bad pain is injury-inducing. It causes permanent structural damage.
Yeah, so the menu helps with that.
Yes, the discomfort menu is designed to be controlled and progressive. It's about building distress tolerance safely, not destroying your physical vessel.
But there is a massive friction point here. When you build a mind that is entirely calloused against suffering, you don't live in a vacuum. You eventually have to take that heavily armored mind into the real world, around normal people.
And that collision creates his most controversial concept, taking souls.
Taking souls. It sounds incredibly aggressive.
And frankly, on the surface it is. But the core concept is actually quite profound when you examine the group dynamics.
How does it work?
Taking souls is about pushing so hard and enduring so relentlessly in a competitive environment that your opponents or your peers actually lose their will to compete against you.
It's like being the pace car in a high-stakes race. You aren't trying to run the other drivers off the road or physically crash them.
Right.
You are just driving so flawlessly and enduring at such an insane speed that you are forcing everyone else to drive faster just to keep up.
And when they look over at you, taking unimaginable suffering without slowing down, their own internal governor gets recalibrated.
So it's not malicious.
It is not about cruelty or dominating others for the sake of ego. It is about demonstrating the absolute outer limit of human capacity so clearly that it shatters the self-imposed limits of the group.
That makes sense.
Humans are highly social creatures. We subconsciously base our effort on the norms of our peers. By refusing to quit, he radically raises the baseline for everyone in his vicinity.
We do have to examine the dark side of this philosophy, though.
We absolutely do.
Because the cost of this mindset is absolutely staggering. I mean, he has physically decimated his body. He has a torn labrum. He's missing cartilage in his knees. He has run on severe stress fractures wrapped in tape.
It's intense.
He even openly admits that his intense, uncompromising approach has alienated friends and is essentially incompatible with a peaceful, balanced life.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's crucial to understand that Goggins operates with a maximized internal locus of control and an exceptionally low need for social approval.
He just doesn't care what people think.
He decided consciously that discovering his absolute physical and mental limits was more important than comfort, longevity, or social balance. He is a model of what the human machine can endure, not a mandate for how everyone must live their lives.
There's also a major critique regarding the lack of structural analysis in his work.
Yes, that comes up a lot.
Because his radical individualism essentially boils down to the phrase, your excuses are your fault, which is empowering for many. But for people facing real systemic oppression, severe poverty, or chronic physical disabilities, that rhetoric can feel a lot like victim blaming, you know? It ignores the very real external barriers that exist.
It's a highly relevant critique of hyper-individualistic self-improvement. His philosophy does not account for systemic societal barriers. However, the psychological tools themselves remain highly adaptable.
They don't require you to be an elite athlete.
Exactly. You don't have to run 135 miles to utilize these concepts. A single parent working 2 jobs can apply the 40% rule to their emotional endurance.
Right. You can use the accountability mirror to confront how you show up in your relationships.
Yes. Or you can use the cookie jar to get through a grueling creative project or a difficult exam. The physical extremes are just his personal laboratory. The mental mechanics can be applied to any arena.
So what does this all mean? If we zoom out and look at everything we've unpacked today, The core message, the warning order from his book, is a mission to break the chains of your own mind.
It is a complete rejection of the victim mentality, regardless of the hand you were dealt at birth.
It demands the realization that motivation is entirely unreliable.
Motivation is a fleeting emotion. Discipline, forged through deliberate discomfort and radical self-honesty, is the only operating system that will actually sustain you when the enthusiasm fades.
And you don't need to be an ultra-endurance athlete to start using this today. You can implement this operating system right now. Take 5 minutes to write down your top 5 cookies, your hardest fought, most unlikely victories.
And keep them in your mental jar for the next time you feel completely overwhelmed by a task.
Or try just one level 1 item from the discomfort menu today. Take a 30-second cold shower. It is not going to kill you, but it will prove to your nervous system that you are the one in charge, not your comfort-seeking governor.
The ultimate goal is to realize that when your mind tells you you're absolutely done, you are only just getting started.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over on your own today. We've spent this entire deep dive talking about using past trauma and self-created discomfort to conquer the self.
We have.
We've talked about building an impenetrable mental armor to survive the harshest conditions. But consider this. What happens when someone who has successfully calloused their mind against all pain encounters a situation that actually requires profound vulnerability and softness?
That is a fascinating question.
Can a mind that is so heavily armored against the entire world still let the good stuff in? Or does the callus eventually become so thick that it blocks out joy, too?
This raises an important question about the ultimate cost of becoming unbreakable and whether invulnerability is actually the highest form of strength.
It's something to think about. But before you worry about being too unbreakable, remember where this all started. Remember that 23-year-old kid, 70 pounds overweight, spraying for roaches in the dark, suffocating under his own excuses.
Right?
The distance between that crawl space and greatness wasn't genetics. It was a choice to look in the mirror, stop negotiating with weakness, and get to work.